to the prince of Kannauj. Okay, now what happened? This Gaudas, okay, would be targeting Kannauj region. Okay, they would be targeting Kannauj region. Okay, and they killed the prince of this Kannauj. Okay, that is the husband of Rajashri. Okay, now the husband of the Rajashri, when would be killed by this Gauda dynasty, okay, that time it becomes a prestige point for the Prabhakar Vardhana. Okay, and he sends his elder son Rajyavardhana, okay, Rajyavardhana, to fight against this Gauda dynasty. Okay, in fact, he wins this war and he starts the return journey, but in between he is being killed by Sanaska, okay, from the Gauda dynasty. Okay, when he was treacherously killed by the Sanaska, okay, it was not being accepted, okay, it was not being grasped by the Harshavardhana during that time. Okay, and at a very little age, that is after the death of Rajyavardhana, at a very little age of 14 years of age, Harshavardhana comes out for the battle, comes out for the war against Sanaska or the Gauda dynasty, who had captured the Kannauj city. And this was the first war fought by the Harshavardhana, and he wins this war at a very minimal age of 14 years of age. Okay, and that is why since then you will see that Harshavardhana had got more prominence in the ancient times. Okay, that he is considered as one of the greater emperor of the Hindu dynasty. Okay, so here the Harshavardhana would be having a greater significance in the Kannauj region or the Kannauj city. So the Kannauj city henceforth would be ruled by Harshavardhana. Okay, so once the Harshavardhana comes into power, okay, he will also extend till Assam region. Okay, he would extend till the Assam region. Okay, and he would be also extending up till the Indus river. Okay, and moreover in the south he would be extending till the Kashmir region. Okay, in the north he would be extending till the Kashmir region, and when he would be coming to the south, he would be defeated by the Pulakesin II of Chalukya dynasty. So he is not able to enter in the southern region more due to the presence of Pulakesin II, which was more powerful than the Harshavardhana according to the sources. Okay, so here all this North India was under the central power of Harshavardhana during the post-Gupta period. So this is the story. Okay, now let us see some more in depth. Okay, so he ruled from his capital Kannauj, that is from 606 AD to 647 AD for 14 years, and he was facing the opposition from the Shaivite king Shashanka of the Gauda. Okay, he is also termed as the Sanaska. Okay, Shashanka of Gauda, who cut off the Bodhi tree from the Bodh Gaya. Okay, now this question might be asked as a factual question. Who cutted down the Bodhi tree? Now the Bodhi tree was one of the major evidence of the Buddhism. Okay, so you will see that this Buddhism would be on the decline. Why? Because there was religious crisis during that time. Who would win? Okay, major of the tilt was towards the Hinduism. Revival was towards the Hinduism, and that is why Buddhism would be facing major issues of sustenance. Okay, so here you will find that the Bodhi tree was cutted down by the Shashanka, okay, of Gauda, that is of West Bengal. Okay, so when we talk about the Buddhism during Harshavardhana's rule, so of course the traditional form of the Buddhism declined, but here during the Harshavardhana you will see that Mahayana Buddhism would emerge during the Harshavardhana period. Okay, especially now this Mahayana Buddhism came into more prominence after the second Buddhist council. Okay, that is after the first century, near about after the first century majorly. Okay, so here this Mahayana Buddhism was quite evident during the Harshavardhana period. If you had completed our Buddhism, okay, Buddhism ka lecture, you would be knowing what is Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Okay, if not, please visit the Buddhism lecture again. Okay, so this period witnessed a synthesis between the Vedic literature and Vedic sects and the Mahayana sects, Mahayana Buddhism ka sects. Harsha became the follower of Mahayana sect of Buddhism, and assemblies were being held in the Kannauj and the Prayag. Now this assemblies which were held in the Kannauj and the Prayag were quite evident to show the religious belief system that was evident during the Harshavardhana period. Now, if we take into consideration the Kannauj ka assembly, okay, now first assembly was being conducted in the Kannauj city. Now, I have shown you the significance or the significant history behind the Kannauj city. Okay, now when the first assembly was being, or the religious assembly which was being conducted in the Kannauj city, okay, although it was for 22 to 25 days, the assembly was conducted for 22 to 25 days, but there are quite evident stories of this Kannauj city. Okay, now when this assembly was being conducted, one of the Buddha image was being created and installed on the pillar. Now, this image was at the same height of Harshavardhana's height. Okay, so the ruler Harshavardhana's height and the Buddha image was one and the same. The height of both of them was one and the same. So, this was the significance of the Kannauj assembly. Now, when we talk about the Prayag assembly, now if you imagine the Prayag city, now Prayag is a city which speaks out the dominance of Hinduism sect. Okay, so here the Prayag assembly would be focusing upon the Buddhism, of course, but it would be also focusing upon the Hinduism, especially Lord Shiva. So this assembly had been conducted for more days, in fact more than 90 days. Okay, the Prayag assembly was being conducted for more than 90 days, where we would be seeing that the statues of the Buddha, Hindu gods and Lord Shiva were being installed at the Prayag city. In fact, today also we find its remnants being present in the Prayag city. Okay. Now the Kannauj assembly, okay, if you want to check the factual details, it was being held in 643 AD. Okay, all the tributary kings and the scholars of the Nalanda attended the council. Okay, so if Nalanda people or the Nalanda scholars had attended the council, it's but evidence that the Nalanda University was the contemporary to the Harshavardhana Empire. Okay, after that it lasted for 23 days. Okay, factually in some text it is being written 22 days, in some text it is being written as 25 days, and but according to the government sources it is 23 days. Okay, so after that, when we talk about the Prayag assembly, so this Prayag assembly was also known as a Mahamoksha Parishuddha. Okay, Mahamoksha Parishuddha. Now this was a quite bigger assembly as compared to the Kannauj assembly. Now when we talk about this Prayag assembly, okay, this assembly was being conducted, okay, this assembly was being held in front of every of the foreign traveler, especially Hyun Sung. Hyun Sung will write more about this Prayag assembly. Of course, he had written about the Kannauj assembly also. Why? Because this Kannauj assembly was conducted in the previous 1 year and the Prayag assembly was conducted in the latter 1 year. So it was the gap between both of these assemblies was just 1 year ka gap. Okay, so here you will see that every 5 years we'll see that the donations and the gifts would be given to the people. Okay, now this gifts or the donation would not be only of the economical significance or the financial gifts, but they also had the religious gifts, land grants and everything. And as initially I have told you, the land grants were being also given to the government officials. Okay, so it highlighted again the Mahayana sect of Buddhism. It lasted for 75 days. Okay, and three images of Buddha, Sun, and Shiva were being installed in the Prayag city. Okay, why Sun? Because in Hinduism he is the utmost god or the topmost god. After that, you will see that the Harshavardhana is the follower of Shiva. Okay, and he will be also promoting the Mahayana Buddhism. So all the scholars, all the foreign travelers would be attending this Prayag assembly. Okay, now let us talk about the polity. Okay, now we'll see that of course there was a decentralization, okay, present in the administrative structure. There was also a local governance at a village level. At every local level we will be seeing that the panchayats were being held. Okay, timely elections were being held. Okay, who used to govern all the local governance. Okay, so here, although the administration was quite decentralized, but at the top level we'll see that it was completely hierarchical and the centralized administration. I again repeat it, it was centralized administration at the top, but it was not autocratic. Okay, that is during the, especially during the Harshavardhana period, we'll see that the Harshavardhana will take the council of minister into his favor and take the decisions. So it was not autocratic, it was democratic only, but it was centralized. Okay, so here the united, okay, the united small republics, Harshavardhana united the small republics from Punjab to central India. Okay, and first the areas directly under the Harshavardhana, such as Rajputana means present day Rajasthan, Gujarat area. Okay, central province, present day Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat area, Bengal and Kalinga. Okay, so this is the western and the central part. Second states and the kingdoms such as the Sindh, Jalandhar, Kashmir, Nepal and Kamarpa, okay, that is the present day Assam, became the feudatories under him. Okay, so of course I have shown you the geographical locations of all this expansion during the Harshavardhana period. Okay, now see the coins which were present during the Harshavardhana period. Okay, so the coins were very minimal, and that is why we come to know that the economical situation was not that good as it was during the Kanishka, as it was good during the Guptas. Okay, so majorly we'll find very low amount of coins. Okay, but here one of the important thing we need to take into consideration is that the where the great patron of the religion, okay, with respect to the Shaivism and Buddhism. Secondly, they had the diplomatic ties, okay, diplomatic ties with China, especially with respect to the Song dynasty. Now, whenever you get any kind of question in your UPSC mains examination, although we are discussing just preliminary facts, but out of curiosity, I would like to share with you that whenever we get the question in your international relations, or whenever you get the questions around the neighboring states, it's very important that you should know the history, you should know the historical background of our country with the another country or the with another neighboring state. Why? Because we had a soft power sharing, diplomatic sharing with all those countries since the ancient times, and which is being present at present day also. Okay, so here if we take into consideration the present day Bhutan, Nepal, we are having roti beti ka rishta, right? And the similar case would be present in the economical direction with the Chinese empire. Okay, which is presently also quite evident. India in present date is also majorly dependent upon the Chinese imports and the exports, right? So here this is not one day relation, or this is not an emergent relation which has come up in the single night, but it is a relation which had to pass through many of the centuries and the years to have one mature stage. Okay, so the first stage of the India China relation would be of course the Harshavardhana period. It's not that before that we didn't had the Chinese relation, we had, But India-Chinese relation came up at the peak during the ancient times, only during the Harshavardhana period. Point to be noted over here. Okay, so you can see the Tibetan Empire over here, and this is the Sung dynasty. Okay, Sung dynasty or the Sung Empire of the China. Now see how this Sung Empire is connected through this Kashmir Valley with the Indian subcontinent. Okay, now it would be expanding till Japan, and that is why we'll see that much of the Buddhist philosophies would be quietly evident or similar to the Chinese philosophy, Chinese Buddhist philosophy, with that of some of the Himalayan states. Okay, if you have visited Himalayan state, you will see that the Buddhism which is being followed at the Himalayan state would be majorly similar to what Buddhism is being followed in this Chinese states. Okay, the Buddhism which is followed in the core Indian subcontinent is completely different from the Buddhism that is being followed in the Tibetan region or the Himalayan states or the Chinese states. Okay, so this is the reason how it fades, how it differs from region to region. Okay, so let us talk about the administration. So the kingdom were divided into the provinces. Presently we have the federal divisions, right? We in a single nation we have different states. Okay, so here the many provinces were being drawn in a single kingdom, which were called as the bhuktis. So today we call it Rajya. Okay, during that time we call it as a bhukti. Okay, so a question might come in the match the following types or in the statement based also. Okay, bhukti is related to Harshavardhana Empire. Okay, now after that they were further divided to the Vishyas. So bhuktis are the nothing but the states. Okay, Vishyas are nothing but the districts. Okay, and the Pathakas. Okay, the Pathakas were nothing but the talukas, and after the Pathakas there were grams. There were grams, that is villages. Okay, see this, grams. Okay, so the Gramini was again the head of the grama. Okay, now see every of the state. Now this Ujjain was one of the bhukti, Vallabhi was one of the bhukti. Okay, Magadha was one of the bhukti, Kannauj bhukti, Sthaneshwara, okay, bhukti. Okay, and beyond that they would be having the 3-tier structure. Okay, now the Chinese pilgrim Hyun Sung informs that Harshavardhana's revenue was divided into 4 parts. One part earmarked the king's expenditure. Okay, second the scholars, third for the endowment of officials and public servants. Okay, and the fourth religious purposes. So you will see a quite evident budgetary system, budgetary planning system was being followed during Harshavardhana period. Okay, so the first expenditure had a different department, scholars had different department, officials and public servant, that is the government employees, had different department, and the religious purposes had the different department. Okay, so again Hyun Sung also talks about the law and order. Okay, so whenever the Hyun Sung would be talking about the law and order, he would be majorly talking about the severe punishments that were being given to the culprits. Okay, whether it is criminal, whether it is civil crime. Okay, the severe punishments were being followed during the Harshavardhana period. Okay, in fact the punishments were left up till the death statement sentence also. Okay, so the severity was quite evident. Okay, so again when we talk about the military, so it had the well organized standing military. They used the elephants, camels, cavalry and infantry. Okay, the cavalry and elephants were separated, had a separate commanders to dwell them, to train them for the wars. Okay, the head of the cavalry was known as the Brihadaswaru. Okay, and the king was assisted by the council of minister. As I have told you that it was not an autocratic state. Okay, it was a democratic, but it was centralized state during the Harshavardhana. Okay, so the Banabhatta also gives the list of the ministers. Okay, and they were also known as the Kumar Amatyas cabinet. Okay, the very uh, sacred group of the council of minister, that is the cabinet minister, were known as the Kumar Amatyas. Okay, had the superior power. After that, Shaivism was followed and the Buddhism was also followed, but Buddhism was on the gradual demise. And the three dramas which were quite present in the literature were the Priyadarshika, okay, Ratnavali, and Nagananda. Now, Ratnavali was being asked in UPSC preliminary examination. Okay, you might be asked about the Priyadarshika and a Nagananda if UPSC thinks to put again a next surprise for you in the examination. Okay, and all the literary achievements were attributed to boost the Harshavardhana's empire image. Okay, which was done during each of the reign. Okay, now how was the society? Okay, so of course the Purdha system was not evident. The status of the woman was quite good or better as compared to the post Gupta. Why? Because the woman from the high caste system were allowed to have the education, but yes, intercaste marriages were not allowed. Swayamvar system was totally on decline. Okay, women were not given the right to choose their husband. Okay, so Swayamvar system completely declined during Harshavardhana period. Beyond this, you can say that the Sati system, of course, some of the sources says that there were the evidences of Sati system, but many of the sources say that there was a decline of this also in many of the parts. Okay, so the Sati system, okay, Sati system was quite evident in some parts while it was not being promoted in some parts. Okay, so the Kannada flourished in this phase. Okay, the Kannada language flourished. Okay, and the dominance of the Sanskrit and Prakrit was controlled. Okay,